You're a girl dad, you're a man's man, you know exactly how to protect your daughter, you have all the things figured out, or do you? I, like you, um, I felt that way. I'm an army guy. I did all the things. I feel like I could read people fairly well, and I took my daughter to the daddy-daughter dances, took her on daddy-daughter dates, bought her first expensive jewelry, all the things that we as dads would do to kind of help our daughters to recognize what those qualities and traits should be to be a good role model, so that when she's of a dating age, whatever that might be, that's arbitrary and subjective for most families. But when she's of that age, she has a frame of reference from dad to know what to be impressed by and how to recognize certain red flags and so on. So in this video, I want to talk about all the right things that we can do and we have done, and all the right steps that we can take, and the fact that all of those things could actually make your daughter vulnerable. I know it sounds like a crazy thought, but unless you're vigilant, right? And so I want to just leave you with 3 tips from my own experience, our family's experience, raising a girl who got to the age, the dating age as a young adult woman. And I just wanted to take that, those experiences and turn them into helps and tips that could potentially help you as a dad that's maybe sitting in the same position that I was sitting in about a year and a half ago. And hopefully you could use some of what I have to say today. So tip number 1 is cast a vision early. Now, I talk a lot about vision casting, and one of the reasons why I started talking about vision casting was having conversations with my own kids, my daughter, as well as my son, who's a little younger. And you know how young people get to the point, I think she was going into her senior year of high school, and they get to this point where it seems like they want to figure out their entire lives, like right now, and they want to, to spend a lot of time deciding, okay, what's the next 4 steps that I'm going to take, which is not necessarily a bad thing to have a strategic outlook on their lives. But what I try to explain to them is that I believe that you don't have to have all the answers right now, every single step mapped out, but at least you should have a vision for what you want your life to look like and where you want to end up. If you look up vision casting, you'll see that topic discussed in organizations, corporations, nonprofits, churches, right? But I wanted to take those concepts and use them for my own life, because those things actually can lead to making the right decisions, making the right choices that can kind of get you to where it is that you're going to eventually end up, right? And so I think that both dating and vision casting are choices that help shape the future. So, you're not just helping your daughter to avoid bad dates or, only. You're also helping them to like live and date with a purpose. And so I feel like vision casting and understanding for yourself what that looks like. In fact, I would recommend that you do look internally to your own relationship with your daughter's mom, with your wife, and figure out what your own value system is, and your value system as a family, in terms of marriage. Like, what is the purpose of marriage? What does that look like? Like, you know what I mean? And I think understanding your own value system and trying to help her to align hers would be helpful, and the steps toward vision casting would help with that. And so the whole conversation about value system, and I'll talk about this in one of my other, somewhere in my other two tips, about the conversations that are worthwhile to have. And in fact, if you comment Love Smart Values Map, or just Values Map, or Love Smart, or some form of those, just comment that, and I'll just get you a link to a resource that I have, and I think it would be helpful to have like that icebreaker moment, and have those conversations with your own daughter, right? But I think the takeaway from this tip is that every relationship is a stepping stone or a stumbling block. And so it's so important to make sure that you're having those conversations with your girl. All right. And tip number 2 is, I say, go with your gut, right? So if something seems off with the boy, the young man, the man boy that seems to have an interest in your daughter, you know what? It's probably right. Go with your gut. Understand that, your wife may not see things the same way you do, because I think, in my own experience, I don't want to cast, like a blanket statement about women and how they process things, but I know in my own experience, I tend to be, my spidey senses would be activated with certain things. I feel like I could, read people fairly well, and but in my in my scenario, my wife tends to see the best in people up front, and then they have to show her that maybe they don't deserve her trust and confidence. And with me, I kind of pay attention to that early. So, and I would imagine you're the same way. In my experience, I tended to back off a little bit because I have some rough edges, and over the years, I've really improved with how I interact with people, and how I just with a little bit more grace and so on. And so, I tended to defer to my wife's approach, But what I would say is, just find a way to communicate what you see, what you think, and follow through. And if the young man is of good character, well, there'll be an opportunity for him to prove you wrong, right? That's the way I look at it. So that's my tip, is that, act on your gut analysis and follow through, because it could lead to actually protecting your daughter. Now, I think, like earlier I said, doing all those right things can actually make your daughter more vulnerable. I feel like I need to circle back and explain what I mean by that. In the process of raising your daughter to be like the model citizen, and even the model wife, like the Proverbs 31 woman, what could happen, and I feel like it kind of happened in our family, is that your daughter, especially in the context of church and church life, if someone is disingenuous and they have ulterior motives and they just don't share the same value system that your family has, and they're in the church environment, they've figured out a way to be deceptive. They've figured out a way to be a good, like, to act well and to be a good pretender, right? And when you raise your daughter in such just raise her well, I feel like there is a tendency for your daughter to analyze what she's seeing in the best way, with the best lens, you know. And so and people like disingenuous people, young men, they can recognize when someone was raised in a different way, and they'll put on that cloak, right? And they'll pretend to be a certain way. And the other thing is, like, you don't know how your daughter is going to react and respond to romantic stimulus or stimuli. You just don't know how she's going to process, that when she confronts that type of relationship. And so that's why you have to be even more vigilant, to step in and to try to guide her. And so that's my tip, and that's my philosophy on that. The third point that I want to say is, someone said rules without relationship lead to rebellion. Rules without relationship lead to rebellion. And thankfully, I had a good relationship with my daughter over the years. And I think in the end, that is kind of what helped in the situation. So what situation? What I'm referring to is the fact that my daughter actually got engaged to someone, and but during the course of that engagement, she discovered certain things about him and his character that led to her breaking off the engagement. So, but one of the pivotal moments that led to that was a conversation that she and I had. And this gets to the whole relationship thing, right? I was able to sit down with her, and even though, my daughter said she wouldn't marry someone if I didn't approve, like that's gonna have to happen. She's admitted that. It's not like I'm saying, hey, I'm not like bringing the hammer down or anything like that, but she's actually communicated that, which is a good thing. That's the type of relationship I believe that we want to build and establish and nurture with our girls, right? But I think even though that's the way she felt, I don't think until that conversation she really understood my reservations, right? Because I had reservations because I saw red flags. And that conversation allowed me to, I kind of doodled this diagram. In fact, that's the diagram that I used as the basis for writing a book and for starting an online webinar, like a workshop to help other dads kind of have that icebreaker moment. But that little diagram gave me a chance to kind of explain and demonstrate what my red flags were. And after that conversation, she, kind of had some clarity. The other thing that I think in terms of that relationship piece, and I want to, here's my disclaimer. I am not a theologian. I'm not studied in the word. But I came up with this theological perspective that until your daughter is married, right, you in the spiritual realm and hierarchy of things, you as the father occupy a certain position of power and authority in the heavenlies. And that belief kind of informed the way I prayed. and I prayed for my daughter. Once things got to the point where I was like, no, this can't happen, and she hadn't quite yet come to the realization, I prayed from that perspective, and in the end, God answered that prayer, and I was able to help my daughter discover some things, those red flags we talked about, but I mean, she was still devastated, and a lot of lessons learned and so on for her entire family. But in terms of the relationship building, I want to encourage you to not continue to see your girl as if she's 5 years old. I think for most of us dads, at least for me, it's like you miss the transition that's happening while it's happening, and I want to encourage you to kind of make a conscious decision to just have those icebreaker moments about certain themes and topics that you would actually talk to your daughter about, and build that relationship, right? But anyway, if you would like to go deeper with anything I said, sometimes I attempt to be brief, and then what I do in my brevity is I say things and it's like it didn't like reconcile. It didn't. I didn't circle back. So if you would, just drop a comment, and just indicate that, and I'll share another resource that I have that may help, and it'll give me a chance to just connect with you as a dad. Send you an email with something or whatever. You send me an email. I've joined some Facebook groups as well, a couple of just two of them. I don't remember the names right now, but and I'm pretty new to them. I haven't really engaged a whole lot, but I know, I'm positive that fathers raising girls have questions, and I sincerely hope that something I said today helped you, and yeah. So, hey, have a great year, and continue to be a great girl dad, and I'll catch you in another video.